everyone. Good morning. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This right here is Nick Wright. What is happening, Chris
Me
Carter?
and Dusty were flashing some gang signs
at each other. It almost got caught on camera. Wow.
Oh,
that would have been a
Dusty.
great way to start a Wednesday morning.
We have our statistician just over to the side.
He doesn't need to be on camera. Don't worry about all that.
I don't know Dusty's last name.
Oh, that's embarrassing. You've worked with him 2 years.
First name Rusty, last name Dusty.
There you go. What he said.
Keep it up, Dustin. Wait, you're doing great today already, buddy.
Okay.
That's his last
name. And now I know. Look at that. Learn something new every day. The Saints might never get over last year's NFC Championship loss.
I'm sorry.
Andrew Luck is already dealing with another injury. Dusty's last name is Waite, and Ezekiel Elliott is still in Cabo. That's where you start the show this morning. The Cowboys' star running back continues his holdout while the team appears to be digging in on their stance of not caving. According to reports, the Dallas Cowboys are not going to let Zeke force their hand. So just how bad could this situation get? Well, the once preposterous idea of trading him is now being floated around. So, let us continue to float this. Should the Cowboys trade Ezekiel Elliott with his holdout now entering day 6?
Absolutely not. You don't acquire a player in the draft like Zeke, and now you're going to trade him just because contract demands? He could have easily led the NFL in rushing every season he's been in the league. Easily. Their team is based around his ability to be able to run the football and run it 22 to 25 times a game and be able to have that same durability the next week. One thing about Zeke that makes him so special is he's so consistent. If you watch him when he runs, he very seldom gets tackled in the backfield. He has a great pad level, what they call as a running back. That means his pads can get under your pads, and when contact is made, does he fall forward or does the defender drive you back? And most of the time you see with Ezekiel Elliott, he's falling forward. He understands the running game, the concepts of the running game. He's a competitor. The bigger the game, the better he's going to play. No, absolutely not. Not now. Not right now. Not at the beginning of training camp. Now, if we get to the end of training camp and Zeke wants a couple more $1 million a year than Todd Gurley got, that there's no market out there for that, and I know I'm getting ready to pay Dak, Amari Cooper's on the horizon, they got some other guys on the defense next year, then I would think about it at the end of training camp. But right now, absolutely not. I wouldn't even put feelers out there to what would Ezekiel Elliott in a trade, what would it fetch?
Here's the thing. I don't think the Cowboys should. I cannot eliminate the possibility that they will, because weird things happen in the NFL over the last 8 months. Teams have decided the cool new thing is to trade your best player. Antonio Brown got traded. Odell Beckham Jr. got traded, not because those guys weren't good, not because they were on the downside, not because for Antonio it was about money. For Odell, it was about fit and personality, and he was just about to have that new contract kick in. For Zeke, it would be about money. So I wouldn't do it, but I'll be honest. There's a lot of things the Cowboys have done over the last 12 months I wouldn't have done. I would have. They are just now seemingly finding religion on the constraints of the salary cap. The salary cap rules and regulations did not change between now and when they traded for Amari Cooper. They traded for Amari Cooper knowing his contract situation, knowing Zeke's contract situation, knowing Todd Gurley's precedent, knowing Dak's contract situation, knowing Byron Jones is coming up, knowing DeMarcus Lawrence was playing under the franchise tag. Like, it's not as if they are in a situation. Let's take Washington's football team for a moment, where you spend a ton of money on a quarterback, he then suffers a traumatic leg injury, and now that's going to be dead money on your cap, and you got to do this in the draft with the quarterback. The status quo from when they've made all these decisions has remained the same. I think the only thing that changed is this. They didn't think Zeke wasn't going to show up.
No.
They thought Zeke was going to be a good soldier for another year, and they could deal with his contract a year from now when Dak and Amari most likely are taken care of, when they decide, okay, is Tyrone Crawford going to come off our books? It looks like Byron Jones going to get a ton, but maybe he's not going to have an all-pro season in 2019 like he did 2018. And that's where Zeke's put him in a bit of a trick bag, which is he is their best player. The only hope they have, in my mind, of winning the division is if Zeke plays and plays a full 16 or close to a full 16 games. And now they are up against it because the salary cap is what it is,
right.
and it is a hard cap that you can wiggle around if you want to borrow from future you, but eventually that bill always comes due.
The trend in the NFL now is obviously the passing game. You have these elite passers, and you sort of write your script based on that. And Jerry Jones is sort of trying to sell this idea that the NFL has devalued the position of the running back, that it's not necessary to win a Super Bowl. But Dak Prescott's not an elite passer, and Ezekiel Elliott is the focal point of their offense. So it's really hard, and maybe in other situations you could see this with the running back, you could potentially trade him. But what are the Cowboys without Ezekiel Elliott, especially if Jerry Jones wants to win this year or next?
Right, when you look at the way the team was built, they were ready to have some success. They thought it was going to be with Tony Romo. They had that young offensive line. Tony Romo was at the end of his career. They have this great draft. They get Ezekiel Elliott. They get a guy, Dak Prescott. We don't know what he's going to be. He's a fourth rounder. Hope he's an NFL backup and that one day that he's a starter. But things happen in the NFL. All right? Tony gets hurt. Zeke is amazing. Dak comes in and is able to manage, play a very manageable game. Like, wow, he looks like an NFL quarterback. And the way the team was built, it was built ready to win right then. Not into the future, because those offensive linemen, you can't have 3 of your offensive linemen that are in the top 5 at their position. You can't have a wide receiver who's going to be in the top 10 of his position. A quarterback's going to be in the top 10 or 15. And then now you want a running back who wants to reset the market. So, no, this team was built to have some success. They found money in Dak Prescott in that 4th round with Tony Romo being injured. So I thought that first year was the best opportunity for him. And now, Dallas, as far as managing the salary cap, Jerry Jones is like, listen, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones is going to have to deal with this into the future, because the Jerry Jones, the decisions he made 17 and 18, they didn't get paid off because they didn't win a Super Bowl. But, man, they've been right up against the cap. So they haven't mismanaged it, but that salary cap hadn't been real friendly to the Cowboys.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the name Tony Romo, because to me, people forget the way this fell. 2014, Tony Romo had the best year of his career, led the NFL in passer rating, led the NFL in yards per attempt, set his career high in passing touchdowns. And that was the Dez caught it, Dez didn't catch it year, where they were 12-4, they had a great season, and it falls flat because of that. The next year, Tony gets hurt, and the season falls apart. The following year, Tony gets hurt in the preseason, Dak takes over, and they have that brilliant 13-3 season. And then they make the decision that I bet still at moments keeps Jerry Jones up at night, which is he said goodbye to his adopted son for his new adopted son, Dak Prescott. And since then, because now when you see how long quarterbacks are playing, Tony Romo, I looked it up this morning, 39 years old today. Like, it's not his birthday today, but as we see today, he'd be 39. That's a reasonable age to still be playing quarterback. They decided to move on from Tony, who was Jerry's guy, for Dak. And then they have continually tried to make decisions to make sure that decision is validated. That's why you trade for Amari Cooper, who now jumps Zeke in the pay line. That's why you don't have a cheap first-round pick on your roster right now, instead going to be an expensive receiver. That might be one of the reasons you said last year, we got to pay Dak. Dak's franchise quarterback. You don't get rid of Tony Romo unless you got a franchise quarterback.
And that's why you need to make sure you pay your offensive line to protect a guy like Dak.
To protect him, all of it. And now you got the best player on your team saying, okay, I'm in Cabo. Good luck. Let me know when you're going to actually pay me what you said you were going to pay me a few months ago. And the Cowboys in a really rough spot.
We'll wait and see how this one turns out. All right, take a break. Coming up, some bad news for the Colts as Andrew Luck sitting out because of Kevin Durant. That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We'll be right back. We'll get to Andrew Luck in just a second, but first, this is Oakland's Chad Pinder. Watch a terrific diving snag down the right field line. Wait for it. Nice focus, nice catch.
Oh, that was going to be fair, too, there.
And that one didn't feel good either. Didn't
Great
have a ton of
catch.
time to brace himself. Oof.
That's as far as a right fielder can run to get to a ball.
Here we go, a little minor league action.
Whoa!
Dayton Dragons' Michael Ciani stretching out for a really nice catch.
Okay, now
here.
that's an athlete. Watch how he goes off of 1 foot. Oh, man, didn't need to get the 2 to gather up. Oh, Michael, that's the Hall of Fame hands of the
Call him up, Cincy. Just added Trevor Bauer, moved on from my guy Puig. More on that later, potentially. Call him up to the big league squad.
He was playing a little shallow, Did get off on the crack of the bat, but his angle wasn't the best.
Oh, hold on a second, though.
Hold on, little Chiefs training camp action. Patty Mahomes out here practicing the old no pass.
Oh, who's there? Oh, and there was the illegal contact flag on the play. Don't matter. That's still a completion. That's still a first down.
That's great.
Oh, yeah, man. How you going to defend that? Looking that side of the field. Oh, but I see you coming. Don't worry about it. I got you, man. Right there. Bap, bap.
Like the defensive end told him, you wouldn't have thrown that ball in practice. Like, you would have gotten sacked in the game.
Hey guys, it's Nick Wright here to tell you a bit about 23andMe. Sure, DNA testing can tell you about where your ancestors are from, but did you know it could also give you a lot of genetic information about your health and traits? Understand more about yourself today and inform how you live your life going forward. 23andMe allows you to better understand your health background. You can learn about many health conditions, such as harmful blood clots. The F2, F5 genes help you stop bleeding if you get hurt. Certain versions of the F2, F5 genes can also increase the risk for harmful blood clots. You can also learn about hereditary breast and ovarian cancer. The BRCA genes repair damaged DNA that could otherwise lead to cancer. Certain versions of these genes can increase the risk for developing breast, ovarian, prostate, and other cancers. Both men and women can be affected. 23andMe reports do not diagnose disease or describe overall likelihood of developing any disease. 23andMe tests selected genetic variants only. Visit 23andme.com/FTF for important test information. Order your health and ancestry kit at 23andme.com/FTF, and you can meet your genes in over 125 personalized genetic reports. That's the number 23andme.com/FTF.
To the Colts now.
The unknowable.
I'm sorry.
Some bad news for Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is dealing with a calf injury that'll see him miss the preseason opener. Says he's no stranger to this news. Andrew Luck's had a host of injuries during his time in the league. Head coach Frank Reich said Kevin Durant's calf injury, which led to a torn Achilles, was definitely a factor in sidelining his quarterback. Here's Luck on why he's not rushing himself back.
The nature of it is a calf strain, and I say lower leg because I feel pain in my ankle area and calf strain, and I guess I'll get a little specific. I've had images and x-rays and everything, and my Achilles is not at extra risk. There is no tear or swelling in there or anything that's indicated, but so it's a calf strain, and we're on our feet a lot, and I know to be the best quarterback I want to be, to help this team like I want to help them, I can't be. I'm not looking for average, and if I'm going out here with pain, I'll be average. I will feel like an average quarterback, and I'll be an average quarterback. That's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for this club.
You got to be careful with Andrew Luck after we've seen what he's been through the last couple of years trying to play through pain. See, what is your level of concern for him at this point?
I'm not concerned at all. Even before Kevin Durant, the reason why I knew about the Kevin Durant injury and I knew the potential of Achilles, because there are hundreds and hundreds of calf injuries in the NFL every single year. There's so much starting and stopping, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The wide receivers are always pushing off from their natural stance. So one of your calves is always going to be sore. Typically now the wide receivers rotate around so you don't have a dominant leg. So you typically have two sore calves, two sore Achilles playing the game. Quarterbacks, their calves and their Achilles typically get sore because when they drop back, when they get to the top of the pocket and they climb, they push off of that lower leg to try to get back up into the pocket, and doing that every single day, it's going to make your calf sore, especially at the beginning of training camp. Even though you might be in great shape, you can't simulate what it's going to take to get ready for an NFL season. So guys come in training camp in great shape. But once you start, you put the pads on, you add the tackling to it, you add the mental distress, you add practicing twice a day, and the repetition for what you're doing it, soreness is going to creep in. So I knew about the Kevin Durant when I tore my calf, then I tore my other calf in the same season. We knew that potentially if you didn't alleviate that pain throughout the calf or take the right time, it could go down to your Achilles. It's interesting that he said about his ankle, because he probably tweaked his ankle, which led to him tweaking his calf, which ultimately, if you don't clean it up, you jeopardize the Achilles. I think they're going about it the right way. I think there are going to be a lot of athletes out there who have calf strains or issue with their calves because what we saw with Kevin Durant, it was such a galvanizing sports moment that, yeah, we should have learned from that. But I think that what they've done through the years has progressed enough to this point. No, you shouldn't be worried about his Achilles as far as his calf is bothering him.
And we should mention that Andrew Luck did go on to say, yeah, I'll miss a couple of preseason games. I will be ready to go for the regular season. If he is rested and healthy and he's 100%, what is the ceiling for Andrew Luck?
League MVP. I mean, what the projections were when he came into the league. Andrew Luck's a guy that I will forever, at one point I'll see Andrew Luck in person. I will apologize to him because he's a guy, of all the people I've ever talked about in sports, that I feel the most badly about how I evaluated, because when he was playing with an injury in years 4 and 5 and into year 6, he did a good enough job hiding the severity of the injury that I talked regularly about. When's Andrew Luck going to show us the quarterback that was the best prospect since John Elway? When is he going to realize that potential?
Not knowing he was hurt.
Absolutely. When is he going to be the guy we saw in year 3 of his career but hadn't seen since then? Well, we saw it again last year after the first 6 weeks of the season, after the Colts started 1-5, after he shook the rust off of having missed an entire season. We saw Andrew Luck be spectacular. We saw the Colts be as good as any team in the league. So the ceiling for him is to win a league MVP, and the ceiling for the Colts is to win the Super Bowl. I don't think many people disagree on that. Now, whether you pick those things are separate, but this team has been built brilliantly by Chris Ballard, digging themselves out of the hole the Ryan Pagano era, Ryan Grigson, pardon me, era kind of dug them into. They have all of a sudden acquired a bounty of draft picks when they traded back from 3 to 6 and still got the All-Pro Quentin Nelson. They then double-dipped in that draft by getting Defensive Rookie of the Year Darius Leonard in the 2nd round. They, I think, did a good job supplementing their team this year without overspending in free agency. And we saw how dominant Luck can be now that he's a veteran quarterback and a fully healthy quarterback last season. So I think the ceiling for the Colts and Luck are as high as any team quarterback combination we have in the entire NFL.
Yeah, I think the expectations, it's hard to be higher than what they were, but they should be higher based on what he's been through, how he's performed when he's been healthy, and seeing the way that the team, the front office is built, and the way the team is being built, and how they're not overreacting to the market. We believe Frank Reich is underrated as a coach and believe that, man, his career is in great hands. He's been through some adversity. If this was early in his career, I believe Andrew Luck would probably be playing in the first 2 preseason games.
That's interesting.
Let's not forget, he didn't inherit a great Indy team. No, they weren't good, man, when Peyton Manning was hurt. No, they were not a good team. So they have replenished this roster. And if you look at the type of skilled guys he's throwing to, if they can get a constant running attack from Marlon Mack, and that would help Andrew Luck out, because that offensive line, last year, Andrew Luck only sacked 2% of his dropbacks, lowest in the NFL. A guy coming off the significant injury that he did, they got that fixed. That's not a short-term fix. I don't know if they'll be that good this year, but they'll be one of the best offensive lines. So they have everything in place for him to be great.
And once they started playing great, the final 10 weeks of the year, he was sacked 8 times. You're going to win a lot of games with any quarterback who gets sacked less than once per game. And when you mention the skill position, guys, you say all the time, see, look at your wide receiving core like a basketball team.
Man, they got it.
Ebron's your center. They brought in Devin Funchess as your power forward. T.Y. Hilton's your point guard. And the guy you like, Paris Campbell out of Ohio State, can be that wing, if you will, can be a guy who can run the football, like get the ball out of the backfield, but also gives them some size and some athleticism on the wide receiving core. So T.Y.'s been, I think, he's made the absolute most of his abilities up to this point in his career, and he's had a great deep ball connection with Luck. But Funchess and Paris Campbell, one or both of those two, should add a more reliable possession receiver.
And let's not forget the awful start they got off to last year. Frank Reich, as a rookie coach, those weeks 1 through 3, they were bad. Weeks 4 through 17, Andrew Luck throws 34 touchdown passes. Only Patty Mahomes, who had 37. All right? through weeks 4 through 17. People forget that. He was exceptional. This is a good team. I wouldn't be surprised a lot of people pick them as their Super Bowl pick.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up,
Not this guy.
Will the Saints ever get over losing the NFC title game?
Me and Dusty
Short
might have
answer
to
is no.
collaborate on.
That's next on First Things First.
You think you know my Super Bowl pick already?
We got a great heavyweight battle for you coming up on Saturday as Brooklyn's unbeaten Adam Kovnatski takes on Cris Saturday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Fox and the Fox Sports app. Time for us to go viral. It's another day, so we get a new video of Ben Simmons shooting jumpers in pickup games. Check out the form. Rocket center Clint Capella had a hilarious tweet in response to all the videos saying, quote, everybody can shoot in July.
Oh.
Twitter coaches chill.
Ben Simmons out there. I think Julius Randle, Rodney Hood, Michael Beasley out there with them. Now, this shot we got kind of the still shot of right there. The form was a little funny. Like,
we should put something up like this and be like, did he shoot the ball with his right hand or his left hand?
Again, like I said,
His fundamentals
are not great.
Are awful.
But he's working, man. You want to see him working. This is a baby step. You got, I implore you.
No, I don't. I don't want to see him on the court. I want to see him doing drills.
Well, maybe he is, but those aren't going to go
Nick,
viral.
maybe I might be right.
You might be right.
Maybe I might be right about this.
You might be right, but I'm saying they're not going to publicize him doing the drills.
When you take bad shots against bad competition, you create bad habits. All right? Like, he's already a bad shooter. He needs to take good shots from deep.
Right. The reason I said
does that make sense?
Of course it does. But the reason I said it's
if I was trying to teach a kid how to catch the football, you think I would start with one hand? You think I would be doing trick shots?
No, but you said last time you don't want him to do any dunks in these games. You want him shooting jump shots.
Right.
So this is a baby step towards
baby
that.
step.
Can I tell you what I saw yesterday?
What kind of contract did he get, Nick?
He got a max contract.
Okay, well, how much is that?
He got about 178.
And we're applauding him because of what?
Baby steps.
I saw Melo in the gym just working on drills, not playing in a game at all. Just drills. That video went viral.
Oh, that's going viral.
But we're not going to talk about that. We'll
NFL
talk about
guy playing in
this.
Major League
Stories to start your morning. Biggest of big brawls in the Reds-Pirates game last night. There's been a season-long simmering feud between these two clubs, and it boiled over. 5 players ultimately ejected, most notably Yasiel Puig. What'd you make of it, Nick?
It was most notably Yasiel Puig because he got traded about 45 minutes before this brawl. Found out from the fans he got traded. Still said, hey, man, last night with my guys, I'm going to go out swinging. Now, the pitcher right there, he was a basketball player at St. John's, and he almost connected with that left, man. That would have been bad news for everyone involved if he connected.
No, he's a for-real fighter. Yeah. There's a lot of fake fighters, especially in Major League Baseball, but no, he calls it out. He runs to the battle line. I'm not into brawls, but that was exciting to see.
This was a good one, man. Puig's a real fighter, too. He's going crazy. The Reds manager had been kicked out of the game earlier. He comes back into the fray to try to fight poor 70-year-old Clint Hurdle. Clint Hurdle don't want none of that mess. Like, the Reds, they got Bauer yesterday. They lost Puig, but Puig went out with a bang, man. Look at this. Look.
No pun intended.
That's the best missed punch since Jermaine O'Neal and that fan that came onto the court.
Back to the NFL now. Julio Jones announced he will not be playing in the preseason. Also added he's not waiting for Amari Cooper or Michael Thomas to get their deals done, saying we're not in the same boat. So you agree with this decision to skip preseason games?
I'm fine with Julio. I know him and Matt Ryan. They spend a lot of time in the offseason. I talked to both of them last season. They talked about how they're in sync with each other. They have experience, not only in-game experience, playoff experience. No, Julio works as hard as any receiver, not only during the game, but also in practice. Most veteran players, they don't need a whole bunch of preseason. So this one right here, Julio, every once in a while, I'll grant an exemption. Julio, he has it.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing the exact thing you recommended he do, which is if you have the agreement on the contract, show up so you're there with your teammates.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
I mean, this was like the word-for-word advice you gave. Show up and tell them I'm not going to play in the preseason games, get my contract done. I feel like he, aside from Fitzy, who you have a obviously special relationship with, this is your favorite receiver in football, Julio Jones.
I mean, he's a special guy. If they have a prototype, it's a picture of him. 6'3", lean body mass, not a diva, wants to play play football,
Good
loves
guy.
playing football. Great
Blazing
guy.
fast.
Oh, yeah, yes. All those
All of
things.
it.
All right, let's move to the Dolphins now.
See, he listened to me. Ben Simmons won't listen to him.
New head coach Brian Flores says it's pretty clear to him that Ryan Fitzmagic is leading in the battle for the starting quarterback job. Fitzpatrick is battling with Josh Rosen, who Miami traded for back in April. And this all confused Nick just a little bit.
All right,
Why,
listen,
Nick?
Miami. You got fortunate. You were able to get a prospect the level of Rosen for only a second-round pick via trade. We know, for good and for bad, what Fitzy is. You're not a contender this year. I understand, Brian Flores, you want to put your best foot forward, but it's not just about this season. The Dolphins aren't going to do, I would hope, what the Cardinals did and have one and done for you as a head coach. It's about long-term for the team, and long-term, getting Rosen as many starts as possible to figure out exactly what you have in him is the best strategy. He has a year in the NFL already. I don't know why Fitzpatrick would possibly be the starter over him when we know what Fitzy is.
Well, this is the thing, Nick. When you run the NFL locker room, you tell the players, the best players are going to play. So I haven't been to one Miami practice. Let me tell you what's happened. Fitzmagic has looked a lot better than Josh Rosen. That's the only reason why Brian Flores would make this type of announcement. It sends a consistent message to the locker room, regardless of what your status is, draft or whatnot. If you do not practice well, he's from New England. You must practice well. Josh Rosen has not practiced well, and Brian said, it's clear to me. It's not a race. It's not close. It's clear to him. So he is doing the right thing as far as establishing his program. You can't put a guy in there on potential. Whoever plays the best should earn the starting spot, and right now, not one of my favorite guys is Fitzmagic.
All right, back to the Cowboys and the standoff
Josh
that is.
probably heard that with them big ears he got.
Zeke versus Dallas. Zeke wants a hefty new deal. Cowboys clearly taking issue with the hefty part, mainly because Ezekiel Elliott isn't the only player Dallas needs to pay. Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper both looking for new deals as well. But according to Stephen Jones, taking care of them won't be easy.
That's my goal, is at the end of the day, we figure out a contract for Dak, for Amari, for Zeke that's fair, that's one they can be satisfied with. But at the same time, they've got to understand there's a real salary cap out there, and any money that we save in their situations, and it's not their job to manage the cap. I agree with that. That's our job to do. But any money we save is not going in Jerry's pocket. It's going to another football player. I mean, it's a hard cap. It's reality. We have to deal with it. And, you know, at some point, the money we spend on these great players are going to keep us, unfortunately, from probably signing a couple guys that we'd like to keep.
It's like selective memory. It's like the Stephen Jones that we heard from early in the season isn't the same Stephen Jones who suddenly was like, well, hold off. Yeah, we would love to pay you guys, but we got to be a little conservative with our hard cap. What was your reaction to what Stephen Jones had to say?
What he's saying is absolutely correct.
It is.
And I mean, nothing he's saying is wrong. It's just, to your point, not consistent with the messaging they've had previously. And once again, it's a reminder what has thrown off the Cowboys' planning is they did plan to pay Zeke in a year. They did not plan to have to make this decision right now. And here's the spot they find themselves in. Everyone talks about Dak and Amari only having 1 year left on their deal. Well, there's another guy who only has 1 year left on his deal. And unlike Dak and Amari, he was actually on the All-Pro team last year. And that's cornerback Byron Jones, a first-round pick that they want to keep. Next season, they already have under contract those 3 All-Pro offensive linemen who all make between $12 to $15 million next year. That is just assuming Lyle Collins walks out the door, Jalen Smith, who's a pending free agent as well, that they do or don't get something figured out with him. So, yeah, the Cowboys are in an incredibly rough spot, not because they don't have cap room, because next year they have, I think, the 5th most cap room of any team. But that's only because none of these guys have been signed. They know that cap room is spoken for, and they are going to have to make a hard decision. You cannot have 3 of the highest paid offensive linemen in the league on your team while also having one of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks, one of the 10 highest paid wide receivers, and the highest paid running back. You just can't. And so they seem to be leaning towards this entire time to paying Dak first and figuring the rest out. And the other part of this that I think maybe has screwed up their budgeting a bit is I think what Carson Wentz got and what Dak is demanding is coming in higher than they expected. that they thought they were going to be able to get Dak in the $22 to $26 million a year range, and Dak is talking in the $30 to $34 million a year range, and that's problematic. So none of this is wrong. It just, what these comments make wrong are the previous comments of promising everybody money whenever some local radio reporter would ask you about them.
Well, it's a constant issue in Dallas, the messaging, when they say it, and the obligations that the owner and other people in the front office make to the media. Jerry's doing a show every week. So every week we get sound bites off of potentially what could be a problem. If you continue to do that, go to New England. Kraft never says anything because he knows that Belichick, he might not be able to live up to it. So you don't get that cross messaging. In Dallas, because they're such high profile in how they run their family business, it's going to always be an issue. The one thing that Amari, one thing that Dak, and one thing that Zeke, more so than those other players on the Cowboys, that they need to realize is, I'm playing for the Dallas Cowboys. All three of those guys are very, very marketable and can make at least 7 figures off the field every year. I would calculate that in as far as being a legendary Dallas Cowboy player compared to some other player. So I would calculate that in. If I'm Zeke, I got 2 years left on my deal, I would be trying to get more guarantees. Forget about the average per year. I would be doing that. If I'm getting Dak, I'm giving them a hometown discount, and I'm telling them, all right, I'm going to give you a hometown discount this time, but I plan on staying here for a long time. Amari Cooper was with the Raiders, and now he's with the Cowboys that he said he wants to stay with for a long period of time. So I just hope all three of those players, because they're not in the same class as Byron Jones and some of those other defenders and everything who aren't as marketable.
Sure.
They're making real money off the field
right,
because of that star on that helmet.
If you could keep 2 of those 3 players, because it seems like that's really all they can afford, who do you keep?
If I could, I'd keep Zeke and Amari. I'd pay Zeke and Amari, and I'd make Dak go prove it. Prove me wrong, Dak. Cost me money. Make me make a tough decision. Make me to where I can't put the franchise tag on you. Make it to where I've got to make you one of the highest paid guys in the league. But I don't think he'd be able to do that. I think that you would see the value come down a bit. And, I mean, the NFL 100, it's a flawed list. I understand. But, man, they got 15 quarterbacks in that top 100. The lowest ranked is Carson Wentz. Nobody is looking at that list and saying, man, Dak got snubbed. That's 15 names. The vast majority of people think, okay, at his position are better than him. There's only 32 teams. He is the definition of a league average quarterback, which in 2019 is a good quarterback because there's so much talent in the league. I mean, to me, that's what I would do. But there's a lot of things the Cowboys did that I wouldn't have done. I'd have been squeamish about paying DeMarcus Lawrence second most money any defensive players, or third most money any defensive players ever made. But they did that. They did that with their offensive linemen. All of a sudden, you got a lot of really good players that are being paid like great players, and it's preventing you from paying the one great player on your roster, Ezekiel Elliott.
One of Dallas's problems is that they're part of all these shows. There's other guys on teams that are good players being paid great salaries, but we're not talking about them.
No doubt.
They have salary cap issues just like the Cowboys, but these are the Cowboys.
All right, let's move on to the Saints now. Their 2018 season ended in controversial fashion in the NFC title game against the Rams. And according to former Saints running back Mark Ingram, that's still a bitter pill to swallow. He said that is something that no one on our team, no one in our organization will ever get over. That is tough. When you get to that point, basically, one play from the Super Bowl, there's no justifying that. There's no comfort in that. CeCe, what do the Saints have to do to break through and win the Super Bowl?
Well, the last couple of years have been tough. 2 years ago, the miracle in Minneapolis in the divisional round, they have that game won. All they got to do is defend the Hail Mary, knock the ball down. That's all they got to be able to do. Stephon Diggs takes it in. Vikings go on to lose to the Eagles. They go on to win the Super Bowl. Then last year, you think you can't top that. Oh, they did. They got home field advantage. They're playing the Rams. That was a great football game that was destroyed by a controversial call that changed the game. People say, well, you don't know if they're going to win. No, we don't know that, but you know that a bad call was allowed to continue, which shouldn't have been there now that they've changed the rules. That's how obvious it was to the NFL. Can they recover? You could never go back. You think Tom Brady right now, you got 6 Super Bowls, right? How many could he have had?
9, certainly 7.
And that's the way he thinks. That's one of the things you're like, man, why is the guy out there? Because of those missed opportunities. Man, I got close twice. 2 times in 3 years, we're in the NFC Championship game. Neither time did I take it for granted that, you know something, this is going to happen all the time. I don't think that they're going to recover because Drew Brees, if you look at the quarterbacks and the teams in the NFC, man, you got to run that gauntlet again. And are they as talented? I think their offense might have a little more variation than they have. Adding Jared Cook as a tight end, I believe he's going to have an unbelievable season with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is the best quarterback that he's ever played with, and his ability to create mismatches and his overall speed, I believe they take huge advantage of it. No, you don't go backwards, because even if Drew Brees was to go on and win another Super Bowl, he's going to look back and be like, man, I should have won 3 if he has 2.
And so, listen, what do they need to do? I know Coach Mangini will say that years don't start where they finish. I get that. But they need to do exactly what they've done the last 2 years, which is aside from a bad, very, very beginning to a season, they've been as good as anyone in football. 2 years ago, they start off 0-2. They then reel off 12. They go 12-3 until the Minneapolis Miracle. Last year, they started off 0-1. They lost to Fitzy and the Bucks, if you remember, in that shootout back and forth. They went 13-1 after that until a meaningless Week 17 game where they already had the 1 seed locked up. The only loss was that shocking nationally televised loss to the Cowboys. I think it was 13-10, that defensive battle. They were the best team in football after Week 1 last year until that non-call in the NFC Championship game. And what I'll say about that non-call is this. They could have won despite the non-call.
Yes.
But had the call been made, they would have won. It would have been game over in that situation if the call's made there. Now, they still can blame themselves for losing in overtime, letting Jared Goff drive the field. I understand that. But where you're nervous for the Saints is this. They're in a tough division, and those teams competing with them in their division, the Falcons and Panthers, have had the injury bug come up and bite them the last couple of years, right? Falcons had their whole defense injured last year. Cam Newton got hurt last year for Carolina. The Saints been pretty fortunate injury-wise these last 2 years. And when you have home field going through your building, when you're in good situation injury-wise, when your quarterback is doing something only one other quarterback at his age has ever done, those are the moments that you need to take advantage of. Those are the moments where your safety needs to not dive out of bounds. It, needs to make the tackle against Minnesota, where you need to get the right call against the Rams, and they didn't. So I think they're an excellent team, but we know it's very hard to have 3 straight great years in a row, and I would say the Saints have had great years back-to-back already.
Even though Sean Payton, Drew Brees, people don't look at them, at their offense as a physical offense, they've been able to add the physical component because Mark Ingram been special playing with Kamara. Now you don't have Mark Ingram. How do they get back to doing that? I'm concerned about the usage of Kamara as a running back. He is not a 20-carry-a-game guy. So I don't think using him 20 times a game in that capacity makes them better. I do believe their defense will be better than what they were last year.
And just real quick to your point, see, that we don't always talk about the other guys on other teams that they're holding out or have contract things. Their best receiver, Michael Thomas, still ain't, they still got something to work out with him heading into this year as he's trying to finally get paid.
And to your point on Mark Ingram, if you want to protect Brees, we don't talk about his age at all, but if you want to give him a little bit of protection towards the durability for the whole season, you would like to have someone in there like a Mark Ingram that could run the ball, especially late in the season. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, could the Cowboys actually trade Ezekiel Elliott? That's ahead on First Things First. Back here on First Things First. Look who's here.
What up,
Eric
my friend?
Mancini.
How are you doing?
Good.
How are
It's a little
you?
spicy on this desk.
We love it. Debating stats and things in the commercial breaks.
Stats aren't a thing.
Way to outline
We
everything
don't
we're doing
debate
here.
them. Go over scheduling
Stuff.
grids. Coach, you want to talk some Atlanta Falcons?
Sure.
All right, why don't we do that?
Coach, when was the last time you came into a room and wrecked it? Besides my show.
Hey, the Falcons
much
missed
every
the
time I come to a
playoffs
room,
last
Chris.
year after suffering a ton of injuries to their defense. Quarterback Matt Ryan, at age 34, considered an elder statesman by NFL standards of sorts. He's well aware that this team can no longer take seasons for granted. Matty Ice talked about this with Adam Shine on SiriusXM's Mad Dog Sports Radio.
You can feel it just in the way that everybody's approaching practice or weightlifting sessions or, in the meeting rooms. There's definitely a sense of urgency. There's a really good vibe in the building right now. It's fun to be a part of it. This time of the year, everybody's optimistic. I've been around a long time, and this team, feels like we could be special.
You agree with Matt Ryan? Do you feel like people maybe are sleeping on the Falcons, that this could be a special year for them?
Look, I love this topic. I think this is a fascinating team for a couple reasons. This is the first time in NFL history that a standing NFL head coach has fired all three coordinators. Okay, so all three guys are different in Dan Quinn's 5th year. So I'm really curious to see how that works. Okay, so that's one element. Then this is the first time in NFL history that you have an offensive line that has the potential to start all #1 draft picks. It's never happened before, but they have the chance to have every single offensive lineman be a #1 draft pick. And then when you add in Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, you've got 3 more #1s. So you've got 8 or 9 #1 draft picks on offense. So you should have the potential offensively to be really, really special. What was it, 2 years ago they were in the Super Bowl, or 3 years ago they were in the Super Bowl, 2 years ago they were in the playoffs.
Yes.
Do I think people are sleeping on them? It depends on how these coordinators come together, what that translates into, and that's not easy. That's not easy for the players that are in the building, for everybody to get on the same page. So how quickly they can do that. But from a ability standpoint, yeah, people could be sleeping on the Falcons in a significant way if they can come together and gel early with that new group.
And to your point, Coach, 3 years ago in the Super Bowl, league MVP, one of the 10 highest scoring offenses in football history. That's what they did. 2 years ago, despite having a ton of troubles in the red zone, they get to the divisional round of the playoffs, down 6, 1st and goal, 9-yard line, to go to knock out Philly, to go to the conference championship game, and they just can't punch it in. And then last year, it was a combination of 2 things that wrecked their season. You alluded to one of them. By week 8, half their defensive starters on their back 7 were gone for the year. Just devastating injuries. But also, I know on the standings all losses count the same. But in the first month of the season, when you lose because week 1, the way your playoff game ended against the same team, 1st and goal from the 10, you can't punch it in. That's how they lost to Philly. Their next loss came in overtime to New Orleans. They lose the coin toss. Drew Brees drives down the field. And their next loss came, Andy Dalton throws a touchdown pass with 8 seconds left to beat them by 1. When you start off 1-3, when you know you could be you're 3 plays from being 4-0, and you're dealing with all these injuries, I feel like it totally saps you for the year. I know great teams, you overcome it, but that is a really difficult way to start the season as far as emotionally and physically with the injuries. But the talent's obviously there. And I don't think this is a team that has to have a great defense to be a double-digit win team because of how prolific the offense can be. And we would expect Calvin Ridley to be even better this year than he was last year. You know what you're getting from Julio. I had no idea the stat about the offensive line, but that's really fascinating. And so we know how difficult the NFC South is, how historically it has turnover. It's very rare that a team wins it back-to-back years the way the Saints have. But they're as talented on one side of the ball as any team in football. And defensively, we've seen if they're healthy, they can be a top half of the league defense as they were in 16 and 17.
And yet, CC, we talk so much about this Falcons team that they'll go as far as Matt Ryan takes them, except last year they were riddled with injuries on defense. You look at a guy like Matt Ryan, he's not that quick-footed. He's not an amazing athlete. He's not that great off schedule, and yet he's one of the better athletes in the league that you like. Why is he so good, and why is he the perfect athlete for this team?
Matty Ice, to me, is one of the prototype quarterbacks. He's a good enough athlete that he can run any type of action. He's also a student of the game. I believe he's underrated as a passer. I believe because of Julio Jones and how they run their offense, I love Matty Ice. He can throw any type of throw on the field. His timing is impeccable. He's a grinder. He loves playing football. He loves the dirty parts about football. He's a tremendous leader. There's no one in that organization that doesn't have the utmost respect for him. Last year I did a game and just talking to people, just how impressed, how involved he is with the wide receivers in the offseason, working out at high school fields and raggedy fields. He takes it upon himself, not Dan Quinn, but the thing that you pointed out, man, he's going to need some help from a leadership standpoint. Nick, I don't believe their defense is going to be one of the top defenses. They struggle getting off the field. They struggle rushing the passer. And last year, after Julio Jones, their middle linebacker, got hurt, they couldn't cover anyone. So it's exciting to be able to hear about Matty Ice and the offense, but they got a lot of questions. I believe one of the top 5 defenses will be in Carolina. So we talked about the Saints. No one's talking about Carolina. Carolina is going to come back, and that division, as we've seen the last number of years, it will be highly contested. But I believe they're right where they should be because there's a number of huge question marks outside of their offense, Coach.
And I'm with you on Matty Ice. I interviewed a lot of quarterbacks either in New York or Cleveland, and you send the playbook or part of the playbook to the quarterback ahead of time. You have them study it, and then we'd sit for about 5 hours and go through and see what they had retained. And he was one of the most impressive guys I've ever interviewed in terms of how much he'd studied, how quickly he could retain it, how well he understood concepts, the way that he approached things, the humbleness with which he approached things, and that he generally had. It wasn't superficial. And you can usually see when you spend enough time with a guy in an interview who they are. And I loved that about him. And I think as an athlete, he's a little bit underrated. He's not a stiff back there. He can move around. He can make some plays. Some people, I think, underestimate his ability athletically.
Real quick question about Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn obviously got the job after being the defensive coordinator in Seattle and doing a great job there. I know you talk all the time about how you have to be the head coach of the entire team, but when your background, as yours was, is in defense, is it even more a kind of imperative on him to figure out how this defense can be better than Cris expects, at least a top half of the league defense, because that is where his background is?
Yeah, he's listed as the defensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn was my defensive line coach in New York, and he's got Jerome Henderson there, who is a future head coach. He was my DB coach. He played for me in New England, really bright guy, working the secondary. He's going to have more responsibility. Bob Sutton, where, we can agree to disagree on Bob, but a wealth of experience. He's down there as a senior consultant, and they all work with me in New York, so they all have worked together. I think that's going to help Dan still play the role on. He's also got Ben Kawika, who's with me in New York. He's their special teams coach, who he's worked with. So that familiarity, even though these are new coordinators, is going to help him still pay attention to the whole thing.
I believe Dan Quinn's underrated as a head coach, especially in knowing the players there, the environment, the vibe. It's a college-like atmosphere. They play music all the time. They have their food, Jenna catered in, chefs and everything.
I like
Arthur
food.
Blank runs a first-class operation, and Dan Quinn, I believe, is one of the underrated coaches.
I named my daughter after Dan Quinn.
Thanks, Joe.
Why?
No, you're supposed to say you did, and I was going to say no.
It was
but
not
her
a
name
funny
is
joke,
Quinn.
but it was a joke.
Oh.
Coming up is Andrew Luck sitting out because of Kevin Durant. We'll discuss that on the First Things
But
First.
it does sound to me like if the Falcons' defense isn't good, it's Coach Mangini's fault. You taught them all. They all came up under you.
Yeah, but I'm sitting at this desk.
Back here with Coach Mangini. Some bad news for Andrew Luck to pass along. He is dealing with a calf injury that'll see him miss the preseason opener. Luck is no stranger to this news. He's had a host of injuries during his time in the league. Head coach Frank Reich said Kevin Durant's calf injury, which led to a torn Achilles, was definitely a factor in sidelining the quarterback. Here is Andrew Luck on his injury.
The nature of it is a calf strain, and I say lower leg because I feel pain in my ankle area and calf strain, and I guess I'll get a little specific. I've had images and x-rays and everything, and my Achilles is not at extra risk. There is no tear or swelling in there or anything that's indicated, but so it's a calf strain, and we're on our feet a lot, and I know to be the best quarterback I want to be, to help this team like I want to help them, I can't be. I'm not looking for average, and if I'm going out here with pain, I'll be average. I will feel like an average quarterback, and I'll be an average quarterback. That's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for this club.
Coach, I love what he has to say, but when I think Andrew Luck, I don't think durable. It makes me nervous when he's got any injury, a lingering one. What is your level of concern for Andrew Luck?
It's not very high. I think one of the benefits of going through an injury like he went through is you start to understand how to come back from those things. You start to understand how to treat injuries, how to take a step back and maybe some preventative steps. And when you're young, you're so programmed to push through everything. And sometimes as you get older, the best thing you can do
The reason
is,
why we're programmed, because we got coaches like you from the time we're little. Listen, buddy, suck it up.
Get out there.
you need to know the
Right?
difference between pain and injury. Yeah, it's a fine line, and as you get older, you start to understand that. I don't love the comparison to Kevin Durant. I think as soon as you put that out there, everybody assumes that this is a lot more serious than it is. I'm more in line with listening to what Andrew said about this is a calf strain, and he's trying to be smart about it and put himself in the best position to start this season.
Frank Reich put it out there, actually made that.
Yes.
He should not have said that at all because it just opened a floodgate for reporters to follow up.
Well, I think that right now we're going through an era where athletes, we watch sports, and to see someone's career altered like Kevin Durant, and to think how many athletes out there right now have some type of tightness in their lower leg or some type of calf strain, you would have to correlate thinking, okay, calf strain, Achilles, Kevin Durant. I know when I tore my calves, we did a lot of work on my ankle and my Achilles because I had soreness in both, and it was put out to me. You must clear these things up. So I don't have a problem with Frank Reich talking about it, because the reason why I know the calf injury was significant, he didn't say x-ray. He said we had an MRI. We had some scans. We had some images. So that lets you know that there was some seriousness to it. In the whole medical world, I guarantee you change when Kevin Durant went down, because there are a lot of people out there having the philosophy, if you have a strained calf, don't worry about your Achilles. And after Kevin Durant, if we didn't learn from that, the coach should learn from that. Andrew Luck, that's his profession. He should learn from that. And one thing we do as athletes, when we get a significant injury, we look up any other athlete because there's no comparison. Normally when I go to the doctor tells me, oh, you have 4 to 6 weeks. Well, that might be for the weekend warrior. That might be for the normal person. I want to compare my injury in real time to someone who has the same type of DNA, same type of mentality, and to see what does history say, and if there's some good notes out there trying to duplicate that, or even, as we talked about with Kevin Durant should be looking at Kobe saying, how can I get back before Kobe got back? So I don't mind the extra attention to the calf after what happened to Kevin Durant.
One of the things that we always want to do with our athletes is not give them a timeline, not say 4 to 6 weeks, not get into that game, because every human being is different.
And you get back into a corner.
And well, it's not even, it's everybody heals differently. So what's 4 to 6 weeks for the layman, maybe 2 to 3 weeks for the elite athlete. But sometimes if you put a timeline in somebody's head, they think, I've got to stay out 6 weeks, or I've got to stay out 4 weeks, or I need to come back in 2. And that's not fair either. Both of those ways.
And we should mention that Andrew Luck himself said, I'll be ready to go when the regular season starts. Assume he comes back, he's healthy. How good could Andrew Luck be? What is his ceiling, Nick?
Well, listen, he's had the talent of a league MVP since basically year 3 of his career, and then starting in year 4, he started to deal with that shoulder injury.
And I think right now is the appropriate time, because I don't think you're going to bump into Andrew Luck. I think you should look into the camera and apologize to him for criticizing him. She asked what the ceiling is. First is an apology.
Okay, all right. Well, so I was getting there, my friend. But so Andrew Luck is, of all athletes across sports, the one that I feel most badly about the way I evaluated in the mid part of his career, because he was so hyped coming out of college. He was the best prospect since John Elway. The Colts said, hey, Peyton, we'll see you later. We got the next Peyton. And Jim Irsay then said, man, if Andrew Luck's career ends like Peyton's with just 1 Super Bowl, it's a failure. And I saw this team be good, but not great. And I saw Luck show the full potential in year 3, and then in year 4 not be able to duplicate it. Year 5 not be able to duplicate it. And what I didn't know was he was playing almost literally with an arm tied behind his back. And we saw last year, after he missed a full season, after he had the first month and a half of season to knock off the rust, how good he actually is. That year 3 version, except smarter, and now with a good offensive line and a defense that actually knows what it's doing. Better front office, better coaching staff, and from week 7 until the Chiefs whooped them, they were the best team in the NFL in almost every category. They allowed their fewest sacks. The defense was awesome. Luck was spectacular. And so I do feel badly, because I was out here on Colin Cowherd's show comparing his career to Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill. My first ever blind reveal was that one. And now that one looks dumb, and I get that. But I didn't know he was hurt. And this was where athletes get a bum rap for playing through injury. You're better off to say, man, I can't play, than say, no, I'll gut through it, because you got people like me that don't know you're hurt and say,
You saw last year with Cam Newton.
absolutely, how good are you really? So what do I think his ceiling is? I think his ceiling's league MVP, and their ceiling's winning a Super Bowl. Like, I think they have a really, really good team in place. I like the draft pick of Paris Campbell. The offensive line is extraordinary. The defense is good enough. And Luck's the guy that you've been saying he is the whole time I've known him.
And, Coach, I don't think you're more impressed with the front office, how they've managed it, how they didn't overspend, how they didn't overreact to L. Bell, and his overall recovery. I think that you're high on the Colts in the direction they're going in.
Yeah, they're in a unique position. Everybody talks about building through the draft, and that's what you want to do, because it gives you the best position financially to retain the young talent or to go get pieces in free agency to help support the young talent. They've got a quarterback that can lead them to the Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls. And here they are with 7 draft picks on defense, on a defense that was already pretty good. Plus, they added some draft picks on the offense, and they still have the most salary cap space in the league.
Yes.
That's a pretty good position to be in long term. So I like that. Now, the question I have is, did they address the medical staff there? The way that injury was handled last time, you know, that's an area where when they evaluate this injury, is it the same group that was evaluating the last injury, or have they made some strides there? That's
a couple things to
I'd be
watch,
looking
too.
at that.
Watch their right tackle, Brandon Smith. He could be a liability. And see if the numbers as far as sacks go up this year. I believe that they will. Andrew Luck was so good last year getting rid of the football that maybe that offensive line is not as good as the quarterback. He prevented a lot of those sacks by getting rid of the football.
And, Coach, you see what I just did right there? I hope it's a good template for you, because in about 12 months, you're going to have to look in that camera and do the same thing for Patrick Mahomes. Just letting you know.
That was an apology?
Yeah, that
Folks,
was an
we'll see you a little bit later on. You got to take a break.
I don't hate on Patrick Mahomes like you hate on Andrew.
Talk some basketball.
Check the tape, America.
Yeah,
We're back right after this.
That's why I can't get him to apologize to you.
Never apologizes to me.
You didn't apologize right there.
Tonight, some of soccer's biggest names, including Wayne Rooney and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, join forces to battle Atletico Madrid in the MLS All-Star Game. Catch the action 7:30 Eastern on FS1, also on the Fox Sports app.
I bet this game.
Nick would have butchered that, Jenna. That was
Zlatan
great.
Ibrahimovic?
That's
Atletico
the one.
Madrid? Come on, man. Ain't nothing I can't do, man.
Let's talk some top plays here
No,
from
shut
last
up.
night, and then we'll get to Steph Curry. First, Oakland's Chad Pinder making a terrific diving
All right,
snag
I couldn't
on
have
the
done
right field line.
that. I couldn't have done this.
Yeah, you couldn't have done it with your mouth closed. This is as long as a right fielder can run here. Great catch. This would have been fair, too. So this at least took away at least a double, potentially inside the Parker.
Ooh.
Yep. If he dives and doesn't make it, it might be inside the Parker. You're right.
Ed, minor league baseball here. Dayton Dragons' Michael Ciani stretching out for a beautiful catch.
That was great. I mean, listen, the Reds got in the Reds got in that big brawl yesterday. Probably got some suspensions coming. Why don't we call this young fella up? Fill that void.
Doesn't he run and jump like Gardner for the Yankees?
Yeah.
Didn't he look like that in the air? When he was younger, of course.
100%.
Great athletic play.
All right,
Hall
here
of
we
Fame
go.
hands of the week.
Here we go. I know, CC, you don't like practicing this, but man, it looks good when it's executed. The old no look by Patty Mahomes right there, and someone will catch it, too.
Of course they're going to catch it, man. It's thrown by Patrick Mahomes. I mean, to me, this isn't even news anymore.
You see the ref threw the flag.
Yeah, illegal contact on the defense.
No, it's not illegal contact.
Still,
it's illegal for a quarterback, man, to be looking one way and throw the other way. That'd be illegal. Right?
I like that, see?
See?
Good. You surprised me there. You built my guy up. I like it. I wish Mangini was here to hate on it.
Mangini would not like that pass. Moving on to the Warriors.
Let me see him do that in 7 Super Bowls first.
On his way to Canton. After making the last 5 straight NBA Finals, the Warriors lost KD to the Nets and Klay Thompson for most of next season due to injury. Many people don't think they will be contenders in a stacked Western Conference, but Steph thinks that's a mistake.
At one point, they said we would never win a championship, and you heard that plenty of times. We don't need any extra motivation. I don't either, but this year you could almost say we were playing with house money because we had won championships and we were the hunted, but now we get to go back to hunting.
Why was it so dramatic?
It's his Facebook show. He does a good job with it, Steph.
I felt like I wanted to cry, but I didn't know why I was crying. Nick, do you think the Warriors can sneak up on opponents this season, or is it just crazy to think of them in that capacity?
No, I do think that they are, for the first time since, gosh, Mark Jackson's second year there, like legitimate underdogs. I think that if you are doing a hierarchy of teams in the West, I don't think anyone's putting them in the top 4. I think a lot of people would have them out of the top 6. So, no, I think what Steph's saying is legitimate. Now, will that hunt be successful? Not ultimately successful, not to the level that they've grown accustomed to over the last 5 years with 5 straight trips to the NBA Finals. But I'm excited for this season to see Steph, especially until Clay comes back. Not that dissimilar to what we got to see from LeBron his last year in Cleveland when Kyrie was gone and then Love got hurt and you had to see the do everything version of LeBron. Steph is going to have to play a style of basketball and a level of basketball that he hasn't had to play the last 5 years except for in bursts. And I like seeing I like seeing the ebb and the flow of it. Steph's surrounded by a ton of talent. We know what that looks like. Steph's surrounded by the least talent he's been surrounded by since he's been Stephen Curry, league MVP. That'll be fun to see too. And it'll be for him, I think, a great opportunity to remind everyone, hey man, to a degree, I am the system here. And if all of a sudden the Warriors contracted and you drop me in Orlando or you drop me in Charlotte or you drop me in Phoenix, I would be a great player in any circumstance. So I'm excited for all that, and I think Steph should be. They're not a championship contender. They're not a championship level team, and we know that, but that doesn't mean this can't be a really interesting Warriors team to watch for different reasons.
Yeah, they should be an underdog. But if you look in the last 15 years, the teams that have won NBA championships, the only team that could really be an underdog was the Dallas Mavericks after that, because they upset the Heat and Dirk. Dirk's the only champion because of the supporting cast. Look at all the other guys that have won. You can't sneak up. You can't sneak up on Kevin Durant anymore. You can't sneak up on LeBron, Dwayne Wade after they won championship. You can't sneak up on those people. Those are marquee. Those are the games that people mark. Man, like people are ready they're going to be ready for those games. So, no, I don't think they're going to be able to sneak up on anyone because the respect that people have for the way the Warriors played. But if I hadn't seen the playoffs last year with them struggling without Kevin Durant, if I hadn't seen the Clippers take 2 games from them, if I hadn't seen all that, then I've been like, yeah, you know something? They might have a chance. Man, they got no shot. They don't have a shot to defend at a high level, which has kept this organization one of the elite. It's one of the things that people don't look at when they look at the Warriors. And Steph is going to be exciting, especially the time that Clay is not there. It is exciting to see him as a 2-guard. He is a special, special player. But we're talking about championships. That's a whole nother. How are they going to win 4 series? They got no rim protection. Steph's going to have to guard more with Clay being injured. Clay won't be healthy to the 2021 season, 100% healthy to be able to do the type of things that Clay does. So, no, it's nice to do your little show and everything, but all right, enough of that talk.
Do you think there's a part of the players on this Warriors team that are almost looking forward to this season? Like, we've been the favorites, we've been mocked, we're the assumed winners the last couple of years. We want to show we can do it without.
I think they would have if Clay hadn't blown out his knee. If they had just lost
But they did that before Durant got there.
No, hold on. But if they had just lost to the Raptors and Clay was healthy and Durant then leaves, then yes, because I think then Iggy might still be there. And then Draymond, Iguodala, Steph, and Clay say, hey, let's go see if we can do what we did in 2015, in 2020. And they wouldn't be the favorites, but they would be very, very frightening to me, much more frightening than them with D'Angelo, no Iggy, and Clay coming off the injury. But the Clay injury is what wrecks the whole post-Durant initial season. It's what, to me, made them do, I don't want to say a desperation move, but a little curious move of adding D'Angelo Russell because they didn't want Steph to be running to the ground where he's the only one you have to guard when they're opening the Chase Center. The Clay injury, they were planning for KD to leave, right? Forget KD's torn Achilles. They knew, like we knew, that KD would have a foot out the door all year. they weren't planning for Klay Thompson to blow out his knee at the end of their season and set everything back. That's the part that I think, at least temporarily, they can't recover from.
I think they're going to miss Iggy more than they realize. But that guy, the stabilization, not only to the locker room, the defensive sets that they went through that he was a key part of, I believe that they're going to miss him.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, back to football. Hey, are people sleeping on the Atlanta Falcons? Hear it from Matty Ice next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, we're going viral. All right, check this out from the Saints Twitter account. Drew Brees throwing the ball between two receivers, bubble wrapped. Watch this, watch this.
That's amazing.
That is great timing.
I mean, no, the timing on that is, and the precision is impossible.
I wonder how many times they
I
had
was
to try
just going to say, how many attempts before he got it? Those poor guys are probably concussed at this point.
I'm being
80
told
times?
he did it on the first try. I don't know if I can fully believe that. I don't know if we had men on the ground or women on the ground to verify, but that is amazing, man. I watched that.
It's hard to find someone throw the ball better than Drew Brees, though.
As precise of a thrower
Absolutely.
ever as we've had in this league. I mean, that was crazy. Like the timing of it, it was the timing and the location.
Now, one thing I would have enjoyed, I could do something like this. I would enjoy doing something like this, but I want that to be me and Nick in the things right there, and I just run through him and just, boom, just knock him in the next
Wow,
meet.
wow. Tap, tap.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm being told we can do that? Okay. All right, no problem. Make sure you get that hammy fixed first, my man.
Yeah, my
Oh,
ham's
yeah.
fixed.
Stories to start your morning. And we'll start
About
with the
to be me and
biggest
Cris.
of big brawls
yeah.
in the Reds-Pirates game last night. Now, there's been a season-long
Check my
simmering
record.
feud between these two teams. Boy, it boiled over big time last night. 5 players
Watch out.
ultimately ejected, notably Yasiel Puig. All right, Nick, what'd you make of this?
All right, Amir Garrett, you don't want them problems with him.
Not at all.
Guy
Look
about
at this. Look at
6'5"
that.
and a half, played basketball at St. John's. He ready to fight everybody.
I don't know who the person for the Pirates. He trying to grab his hand. He not trying to fight. He like, somebody get this wild
Whoa!
man.
No, and he also knew bigger problems were on their way. Yasiel Puig, even though he had found out he was traded to the Indians about 40 minutes prior, he was still playing. I'm not sure why. And then fighting. I am sure why, because Yasiel Puig likes him some fighting. So this was great. This was great farewell for Puig. He's angry. These two teams don't like each other. The Reds manager had already been thrown out. He came out, tried to give Clint Hurdle some problems. Clint Hurdle's 71 years old. He's like, hey, man, that's senior citizen abuse. Can't do that. This was a good old-fashioned melee.
There's nobody in the stands, but still, we're enjoying it.
But there was 1 out left in the game. It's 11-3, 2 outs in the ninth. They say, you know what? We getting it in now. I like that. That's
All right,
good, man.
moving on. Ezekiel Elliott is now entering day 6 of his holdout. Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper are looking for new deals as well. Stephen Jones said, boy, they got to understand there's a real salary cap. See, what's your reaction to these comments?
It's the harsh reality. NFL, yes, it's a hard cap. And if you start spending all this money, when you start at the end, the slice of the pie, are these guys going to be happy? No, they run out of money. We knew that before free agency started. Dak must be signed. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't have to be signed. Amari Cooper doesn't have to be signed. They got big problems, and I think Stephen Jones is starting to fess up to the reality, to the fans. Ezekiel Elliott could be out a long time.
This is just a really bad beat for the Cowboys because there's no way they could have anticipated the league in the last 90 days totally changing how the salary cap... Wait, what's that? Hold on. Oh, it's always been this way? Oh, it's been, the whole time they've been talking about paying guys? The cap's been the same rules on the hard cap. There's no... He's right. I don't know why they're just now realizing this is how the NFL works. They know it. They did not expect Zeke to force their hand. They were ready to pay Dak. They evidently had some intel that Amari was going to be patient, so they had it all planned out.
Yep.
Zeke was the straw that stirs their drink. Now he's screwed up their drink for the year because they didn't plan for him.
Yeah, straws are out of style, too, man.
Absolutely.
Killing too much sea life, man.
Correct.
Give up the straws, people, if you're out there.
Confirmed.
Or do the paper ones that disintegrate in a second and a half. Dolphins now. New head coach Brian Flores says it is pretty clear to him that Ryan Fitzpatrick is leading in the battle for starting quarterback down there in Miami. Fitzmagic is battling with Josh Rosen, who Miami traded for back in April. All right, C, what do you make of this?
all the times I've been a high school coach for a long time, last 2 years having coached high school football, and all my kids, they come to me and be like, Coach, I want to transfer. And I'm like, okay. Most of them are at big-time Division I programs. I say, is that guy a pro? Is he going to be playing in the NFL? Because if he is, you might think about transferring. But if he's not, you need to stay there and beat him out. When you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, if this guy beats me out, I'm going to kill myself. All right? That's what I'm going to do. That's what I would have told my kids. If you get beat out by a chubby, unathletic quarterback, Ivy League educated, oh, man, kill yourself. Okay. Like, just as bad
Maybe
for Josh
just
Rosen.
retire would be the better advice. However, I don't listen.
The bosses just told me, yeah, I can say that.
Okay, all right, good. Glad to know. Listen, Rosen is the more talented of the quarterbacks.
How do you know that?
Because I've seen them both play. I saw Rosen play at UCLA. I know he's more talented than what Fitzpatrick is right now.
Okay.
And I also know that Fitzpatrick can look good for a stretch of time and then will kill you. That now, last year, Arizona had the worst offensive line in football. Pro Football Focus, your friends say Miami is the worst offensive line in football. Maybe Flores trying to figure out that offensive line before Rosen gets killed early in the year. I don't know. But Rosen should be the starter.
Let's not talk about anybody dying. Let us talk about, though, the Falcons. They missed the playoffs.
You talk about him. He got some big ears. He'll hear you all the way.
Last year, after suffering a ton of injuries to their defense, quarterback Matt Ryan, at age 34, considered an elder statesman by NFL standards. Well, he's well aware that this team can no longer take seasons for granted. Matty Ice talked about this with Adam Shine on SiriusXM's Mad Dog Sports Radio.
You can feel it just in the way that everybody's approaching practice or weightlifting sessions or, in the meeting rooms. There's definitely a sense of urgency. There's a really good vibe in the building right now. It's fun to be a part of it. This time of the year, everybody's optimistic. I've been around a long time, and this team, feels like we could be special.
Are you one of those people? Do you feel like this team can be special, or you think people are sleeping on the Falcons?
Well, I don't think people are sleeping on them. I think they have a number of questions that aren't answered right now. So, no, their offense is very, very talented. They have been the last several years. I believe that Matt Ryan is underrated as a quarterback. I believe he's one of the best throwers. The offense that they run, how they attack defenses, how they move the ball around. Calvin Ridley, their first-round draft pick last season out of Alabama, he comes out with a rookie campaign of 10 touchdowns. There's been only 4 other receivers that were able to do that. Randy Moss, OBJ, Michael Evans, amongst the 3 of the 4 who were able to do it. So offensive productivity, yes, it will be there. Matty Ice, will he throw for 4,500 yards or so? Probably so. Julio Jones, 1,500 yards? Yes. What will they get from the running game? We know that last year Devontae Freeman hurt. Out, it really hurt their productivity. His backup, Tevin Coleman, has gone on to San Francisco, so they don't have the depth. They need a running attack to be able to protect that offensive line. And their special teams, which they have a new special teams coordinator. Their defense coordinator is brand new. How will they be? Those things I can't answer right now. So, no, I think they're right where they should be. I believe Carolina will be much improved. I believe their defense will be a top 10, potentially a top 5 defense. And you have the Saints in that division. I know Jameis Winston will get better with Bruce Arians. So in that division, man, you have tough opposition. It's been that way for a long time. I think that they're right there where they should be. They got an explosive offense, which we know about, question marks about the rest of that roster.
And also, I think, legitimate question marks about how mentally tough, how much football devastation can a team withstand and come back the next year stronger. We saw them lose a Super Bowl in the most devastating way possible. You're up 28-3. That thing is a wrap. And every single thing that had to go wrong went wrong for them not to win the Super Bowl. Flash forward to a year later. They are in a great position that, yeah, they're on the road in the divisional round, but on the road in the divisional round against a team who's on a backup quarterback in Nick Foles, who hadn't played well at all. He hadn't gone on that magical run yet. They got 1st and goal from the 9-yard line down less than a touchdown to after the Super Bowl devastation. No Super Bowl hangover here. We're going to be back in the conference championship game against Case Keenum, and they can't punch it in. And then the following year, they So last year, the hangover, you want to say it continues. They lose in week 1 the exact way they lost the end of the previous season, down less than a touchdown, 1st and goal, inside the 10, can't punch it in. Lose 2 weeks later in overtime when they never touched the ball to their hated rival Saints, and then let Andy Dalton throw a game-winning touchdown pass with 10 seconds left to beat you. Now you're 1-4, your season's over. You're not coming back from 1-4. Can you climb that mountain again? Can you know how hard it is to get back to the top. You know how well you can play, how good the offense can be, and you're bad for a drive, a series, and it's all for naught. Can you do it? Because they're not going to have, it would be shocking if they have as much bad injury luck as they did last year. Matt Ryan has shown he's going to play to this standard consistently. Calvin Ridley showed he was worth that first-round pick. To Chris's point, we know how good Julio is. Can the defense be league average, and can they sustain the ebbs and flows of the season when last year it seemed to me like their season was over by October 1st?
All right, let's take a break there. Coming up, let's stay in the division. Will the Saints ever get over losing the NFC title game? That's next. This is First Things First. Back here with Coach Mangini, we're talking Saints. So their 2018 season ended in controversial fashion in the NFC title game against the Rams. According to former Saints running back Mark Ingram, still a bitter pill to swallow. He said that's something that no one on our team, no one in our organization will ever get over. That's tough. When you get to that point, basically one play from the Super Bowl, there's no justifying that. There's no comfort in that. Coach, what do you think the Saints have to do after 2 years of disheartening fashion of the way they lost to be able to finally break through this year?
Well, the first thing is they have to get over that play. We got to stop talking about this. And you hear, we talked about Tom Brady yesterday. We heard his comments. Every year is a new year. You got to start at the beginning. You got to work your way up. But you got to move past what happened last season.
And just real quick, Ingram maybe is a good window into how players on the Saints are actually feeling, because they might all, if you're still with the Saints, have the company line, which is we have moved past it. Ingram, because he's with a different organization now, can be more honest about how the Saints might actually really be feeling, because, I mean, even when you heard his words there, he kept saying our, us, we, even though he's not on their football team anymore. He's with Baltimore. So I think it is instructive on how tough it can be to get over those things. Sorry to interrupt.
But it's been a long time. They needed to get over that play during the game. There was a bunch of football that was played after that play.
Before he went to overtime.
And they had a chance in overtime to go down. And so there's a lot of things that happened after that one play that kept him out of the Super Bowl besides that. And I think to make that step, it's the resilience, it's the ability to move on. The 5-second rule we used to talk about, no matter if something's good or bad, you have 5 seconds to either celebrate or to be miserable. Then life moves on, and you got to go on to the next thing. So they've got to build that mentality. I think the other thing offensively is replacing a guy like Mark Ingram. And it's not just what he did as a player, it was his relationship with Kamara. That was special. Like, you see those guys talking and the way that they interacted and did everything together. That's going to be hard to replace. And then losing their center and trying to figure out who's really going to fit in that center spot. It's huge on the offensive line.
And so they were able, in their defense, if you will, to get over an equally devastating loss, even if it came a week earlier in the playoffs the previous year. I mean, the Minneapolis Miracle is as tough of a way you can lose a football game as there is, in that you had it won. If you just make a typical defensive play, you win the game. Instead, the poor safety P.J. Williams just has a total mental error, if you will, and Minnesota ends up going on to win. Last year, they were the best team in the NFL throughout the regular season. They lost week 1 to Tampa. They then won 13 of their next 14 games until a meaningless Week 17 game when they already had the 1 seed locked up. So they were able to recover, and they are incredibly talented. And after 3 straight years of great offenses with awful defenses that led to 7-9 records, they've now had more than competent defenses to supplement Drew Brees, to go along with more than competent running games, so where Drew Brees doesn't have to throw for 5,000 yards every year. So I know every season's different. But what they have to do this year is the same types of things they did last year and the year before that led to them being in the position where they could have won a championship each of the last 2 years. They've stayed healthy. They've taken care of the football. They've played good defense. Drew Brees has been brilliant when he's needed to be. Like, I don't think they need some major systemic changes, assuming they can get over the way last season ended after getting over the way the previous season ended.
Well, they were the best team in the league through 12, 13 weeks. But after that, they weren't the best team. And if they don't get that figured out, Michael Thomas is not there. But also, who's going to be their number 3 and 4 receivers? We know Kamara coming out of the backfield, him and Michael Thomas, 1 and 2, one of the best duos that we have in the league. But after that, there was a huge drop-off, and the league caught up to them. The Rams caught up to them. So their inability to be able to move the ball and score touchdowns in the red zone, people had start to book them, start to figure them out. So I believe they're going to have a hard time replacing Mark Ingram. You talk about a lot of things that people miss on. That intel, when you have a veteran, a Pro Bowler, who surrenders some of his role to a younger player, getting him acclimated into New Orleans. Not only the interviews, all the stuff they did off the field, all the eating, all the camaraderie, that trickles down into your locker room. So they have a great environment there, was created a lot by Mark Ingram and some of those other veterans. How do you replace that? How do you replace that big banger that Ingram gives you that you don't have in Alvin Kamara, even though you're trying to increase his role this year? Do you take something away from his game because of the pounding that he's going to take? Now, I do believe that Jared Cook is the answer as far as a second receiver, as a tight end, because his ability to be able to run, his catch radius is one of the best that we have in the league. And I believe that Sean Payton and Drew Brees will take advantage of the best catching tight end that they've had since Jimmy Graham left there a number of years ago, Coach.
You know, the other interesting thing is Mike Westhoff went and played a role there as a special teams coach, and he came in, I think it was either the start of last year or midway through the season before, and he's not part of that staff anymore. He's back in Florida fishing, and he had a huge impact, not only on special teams, but on a lot. He has great wisdom that he shared and I think helped a lot as they move forward.
But they also were one of the most tricky, if you will, teams as far as fake punts, as far as trick plays in the special teams game. They used Taysom Hill in a really unique way on offense and in special teams. I assume Westhoff had an enormous amount to do with
He had
that.
an enormous part, and even using personnel, and he's such a good resource from a head coaching perspective to get balance and ideas, and he's a good resource for the coaching staff because he was at that point in his career where it was about just he
stabilized their special
and he didn't need to climb. He wasn't climbing the ladder. He wasn't looking for another job. He was just looking to be part of something great, and I think he contributed significantly to that.
Can't the Saints take just a small page out of what the Patriots did last year? I mean, the Patriots are able to sort of prolong Tom Brady and help Tom Brady out. Last year we talked so much about them focusing on the run, which we haven't seen in a long time. But Tom Brady's not that young. I mean, you want to make him last throughout the whole season. You want to be as productive Drew Brees, I'm sorry. You want to see Drew Brees be as productive the second half as he was in the first half. Last year he wasn't. The first 4 games he was. The rest of the season he wasn't. You don't have Mark Ingram. So what do you do about that?
Well, I think the last several years they've done tremendous for Drew Brees. They don't throw the ball as much as they did, and that was part of Mark Ingram. We're going to run the ball. We're going to lean on that offensive line. So also in talking to Drew Brees personally, he believes that he can play as long as Brady. He believes he's in as good a shape. He didn't mention Brady's name. He said this to me: Chris, I take care of my body. I have a staff of 10 people. I believe that I'm as in good a shape as anyone, and I believe I can play as long as anyone. I just don't put it out there for the public like other people do. I understand. I got it, Drew Brees. I knew exactly what he was saying. So, Drew Brees, we can't just expect because, now they're 38, they're 39, they're going to fall apart. Drew Brees is a special, special athlete.
One other thing for them. They are a team that did the odd thing of trading 2 first-round picks to move trading an extra first-round pick to move up, not to go get a quarterback, but to get a defensive end in Marcus Davenport. They have your guy, Cam Jordan, son of your former teammate for a long time. You have the ability to have 2 potential elite edge rushers. Marshawn Lattimore, I believe, is going to make an all-pro team throughout his career. They added Eli Apple, who was a first-round talent for a reason, even if he fell out of favor with the Giants. They do have the ability to get after the quarterback and stop the pass. Like, they can be a very good defense that can play fast on that turf in New Orleans. So it's not just about what their offense can do. That's how you win. You go 13-2 last year before you rest everyone in Week 17. That's how you do what you hold the Rams offense down the way they did until losing in overtime. I mean, I think the Saints are a very well-rounded, very dangerous team. They've just, last year Atlanta got unlucky in injuries. Carolina had their quarterback hurt. The Saints were fortunate in injuries. Like, they were fortunate in injuries the year before. Do they keep that up? That's why you got to take advantage of the seasons they had in 17 and 18, and they just weren't able to.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.